All right, so now we're going to run through an install. I've got an Ubuntu, I think it's Ubuntu, maybe it's Red Hat actually, I'm not sure. I think it might be Red Hat. This is an image running on Azure, and I'm connected to that, and I have already got my tar.gz file here. You can see Arc Home's not set, so it's not sourced in, it's not installed, nothing's installed here. But we're going to go ahead and run through the install. It's not much different than what's the documentation that's generally available on the docs site. But let's do it. This is like the real deal. If I was at your place of work or whatever, this is how I'm going to do it. Usually you're going to pick a very non-important server to run this on first, and make sure you shake out all the little issues. Like maybe you have programs that aren't there that need to be there, or something just doesn't work right. We want to shake it out pretty well on a very non-critical server. So that is going to be the first place you install it. Hopefully all your servers kind of look like that though. So any issues you run into, you'll be able to, figure them out ahead of time. So what we're going to do is you can put this wherever you want. You cannot put it in the home directory. So I cannot just unzip this file here and untar it here in my home directory. That's bad. As I explained in the last post and video about the 3 homes, our user home is going to default to home ArcLogic and then ArcShell. This is ArcLogic user. You don't have to use ArcLogic user. I would install this as Oracle or PSoft or whatever application user you primarily want to do automation with, or you can create it. You can create an individual user. You can run into file permission issues and things like that if you do that. So, like if you're working with PeopleSoft, it's going to be best to run this in the PeopleSoft application account because you're going to have access to all the files and all that good stuff that you need in order to do automation. And you can install it on more than one account. On a server, but if you do that, you want to make sure you designate one of the installs as the primary install and the other ones as auxiliary. Otherwise, they're all going to be like collecting VM stat information, and you don't need all the users on a single system collecting your VM stat. You just need one user doing that. So that again can be checked if you just do look at ArcShell setup. I'll show you that in a second. ArcShell setup, you can see the flags to do that, and I'll also show you how to do it manually. So, okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to make a directory. This is how I've been doing it. CD. I'm going to move this file to my app directory. Whoops. Okay, we'll try and move that to app. CD app, gunzip star, tar minus xf star, move, you can tell I've done this a few times, that to ArcShell, CD to ArcShell, and now this is going to be what's referred to as our Arc Home. If you look up here, it's going to be our install location right there. So nothing's installed yet. Now all the install does is build some directories within this directory, and then within our user, it'll create our user directory in our home, and it'll drop a couple files in our home. I'll show you all that in just a second. So first thing we want to do is run ArcShell setup with -help, just so you can see. So if you want to set your user home, you do -user and then put the directory in that you want to be your user home. -doc rebuilds documentation. That's really only if you're doing development. You don't need to worry about that yet. Main, this is defaults to main, so basically it's going to set this as the main install on this host. If this was not the main install, I'd want to pass in -aux so that it gets designated as a non-main install, and a lot of the things that don't need to run in both accounts won't run. Okay, so you don't need to pass in docs, by the way, the first time you run this, because they don't exist, and it will see that and automatically run that option. And it does generate the documentation on the fly as we do this install, actually. Okay, follow me on LinkedIn if you don't already. My email, my phone, and if you have any questions, get to me. And I'll try to get right back to you. I can shoot videos like this pretty quickly and get them uploaded, answer questions, things like that. All right, so we are all set up. If I go to my home directory now, you can see there's now an ArcShell directory. That's my user home. We have an ArcShell error file. Really shouldn't get any data in this. Otherwise, ArcShell's throwing errors somewhere. Now, there are certain programs you might write that expect to errors, and the daemon will throw errors back to this. You want to monitor this file. ArcShell does monitor this file, but you also want to monitor it completely independent of ArcShell. That way, if ArcShell totally breaks and it's just throwing errors and even its monitoring of itself doesn't work, you still have a way to find out about that. It created this arc-command.shell, and what that helps us do is run commands remotely within ArcShell. So if server A wants to run an ArcShell command on this server, this kind of does the bootstrap. It loads ArcShell and then runs the command so that you can actually run that. Now, this is a really powerful thing because you can basically write a command line script, say for an application like PeopleSoft, PSAdmin. You can write an interface for the PSAdmin utility. And then you can, as long as that utility runs right on each server, you can run commands remotely really easily by saying, hey, for this environment, do shutdown, clear IPC, all this kind of stuff. And it will go, you can write a program in such a way, a pattern, that it sees that, that environment isn't on my server, that's on another server. So I'm going to take this command and just forward it out to this other server and give it to that server to run. And that will be done usually through something like this, but not necessarily. But anyway, when we get into development and showing you how to do development, you'll understand all this. Okay, so that's all ArcShell does as far as it created, your home directory, your user node directory, this file, and then there's one very important file. If we do a ls-lrt, you'll see your .arcshell file, and we can open that up. It's kind of like a .profile, and if you want to load ArcShell in, you source this file in. Now, if you've already sourced this file in, it won't load again because this arc home will be set. So if you want to force a reload, you've got to set that to nothing, and then it won't reload. This gives you some of the information, but here's that auxiliary instance. So basically, if I wanted to set this to an auxiliary instance, I just change that to 1. And that is the case. It shows you where everything is. And if you wanted to move this stuff, I think pretty much all you have to do is move it and update these directories if you wanted to do it that way. That's not really the best way to do it. You can just move the ArcShell home and run setup again, and it builds this file. So if you have any questions on how to do that. So to source ArcShell into my environment, you can notice if I do echo $arc home, that's not set. If I source in ArcShell, echo $arc home is now set. You see that? So now ArcShell is basically available. So let's say I wanted to get some help and I wanted SSH help. See, it loaded that help function. There's something called Arc menu. It'll help us maybe do a few things, and I'm going to be adding to this often. But let's see, go ahead and look at help. And here we can get help on a lot of other packages. I don't know what parse help is doing there. That shouldn't be there. But these are a lot of the modules, core modules, and you can get help just by selecting one of them. Like select 9. There's cron help. So cron is true. It's giving me all the help and stuff like that. And a lot of this, some of it needs to be cleaned up, and it will be cleaned up as we go through this. As you find issues, as you have misunderstandings, we'll get that cleaned up. Run arc menu again, just to show it to you. So we've got help, we've got daemon commands. We'll be seeing those in a minute. We can run setup from here if we want, and just rerun setup. That's something that can be run over and over again, and anytime you make any major config changes, things like that, it's a good idea to run setup. And we can edit that global ArcShell config file, not the local, our user, because that doesn't exist, but we could create a user local. But this is just to help you kind of get up and running quick. We'll see that. And these menus are created with a library in ArcShell. So if you wanted to make them, that's not working right. Another bug. So that should kick back to the first menu, and I don't know why that just started doing that. Of course, because I've got the camera on, that's why it's doing it. But anyway, I'll fix that. And so that is how to get it installed. It's installed on a server. You want it to run here, make sure everything is running wonderfully. There's no issues, all that, before you think about deploying it to another server. And there'll be other videos I'm not going to be able to get to today, which will show you how to deploy ArcShell from this server out to your other servers. You're not going to want to do it with these the way we just did it, because you're going to want to actually package this image. After you make your setup and config, after you do all that, you're going to want to package this image up and deploy it to your remote servers. And then once that's done, you can make changes on this image, and you can either redeploy using a tar.gz file that you create, and there's commands to do that for you, or you can sync using like rsync. That works also. So there's a lot of different ways to keep your ArcShell environment updated across all your different nodes. But we're going to move slowly here, and we'll get to that. So this is how you get it installed, and we're not running yet, but we are installed.